Introducing James Horn, Head of Accessible Vehicles at Motability Operations.
Good afternoon. I didn't get that big a round of applause last time, so I assume that's all my partners in industry who've come to say hello, giving me the big round of applause. Welcome to, Mexican wave would be great, thank you. Welcome to Introduction to WAVs. So I've got some things that I want to share with you that hopefully will provide some information about choosing whether a WAV is right for you. So I want to start with what is a wheelchair accessible vehicle. So when I say WAV, that's what I mean. It's a wheelchair accessible vehicle. There are different types of WAV, so I want to share with you from small WAVs to large WAVs, how we talk about them and how we categorize them. The benefits of a WAV, how you get a demonstration at home, living with a WAV, because it's not all positive. There are some compromises to having a wheelchair accessible vehicle, and then what to do next. So what is a wheelchair accessible vehicle? It's a vehicle usually based on a car that started out originally as a commercial vehicle that's converted to have a ramp in the back that you can access in your wheelchair. Most of them have a lowered floor to give more headroom because, as you'll know, when you sat in your chair, you're a little bit higher than a standard car chair. They're based on things like the Peugeot Rifter or the Ford Tourneo. They include a restraint system. This is really important. If you're in a wheelchair accessible vehicle in your wheelchair and that's driving around, you want it to be restrained securely in the back of the vehicle. They are more expensive than standard cars. So if you were to buy a Volkswagen Caddy, that's cheaper than buying a Volkswagen Caddy that's a wheelchair accessible vehicle, because our industry partners have designed the ramp, the lowered floor, and installed that in their factories. And Motability grants are available to some customers to help with the affordability of the wheelchair accessible vehicle. The foundation are here today, so if you're interested in a wheelchair accessible vehicle, after you've heard all about them, and it's affordability that's the problem, the Motability Foundation are there to talk to. So I'm going to play a video now of Graham. Graham's going to bob up a couple of times as I go through this because he really knows what he's talking about. So let me share a little bit more about what a wheelchair accessible vehicle is.
So today we're at our Bristol offices and we'll be looking at wheelchair accessible vehicles. And with us here today we have a small wheelchair accessible vehicle. Now there are other sizes of vehicles available depending on your individual circumstances and what you need from a car. But today we'll look at what a wheelchair accessible vehicle is, how you get in and out of one, and some of the things to think about before you make the change to a wheelchair accessible vehicle. And to make it easier for you to understand the different options available, we split our WAVs into different categories. There's small, like this one here, small medium, medium large, and large. Then for the more specific conversions, we have upfront passenger, which enables you to sit next to the driver in your wheelchair while travelling. Internal transfer, which allows you to transfer from your wheelchair to the driver's seat inside of the vehicle, and drive from wheelchair, which allows you to drive while stayed seated in your wheelchair. And a lot of customers are interested as to why this particular type of vehicle, this shape of vehicle, is always converted for wheelchair accessible use and not something that looks more like a family car. And the reason for that is the converters, when they're looking at vehicles, need as much height as possible to ensure that there's available headroom for you as you travel in your wheelchair inside the vehicle. To open the vehicle, you just open the tailgate as you would with any car. Whilst that's open, you use the red lever to release the ramp. Now this particular ramp has a counterbalance feature, so if you were to let go of it halfway out, it wouldn't fall to the floor or hit you on your feet. You can either push this down and bend down with it, or if you have a walking stick, you can turn it upside down and push it down. And again, when you're stowing the ramp, you don't necessarily have to bend down to pick it up. You can use your foot to pull the ramp up, to close it, or once again, you can use a walking stick to pull it up so that it's closer to you. If we take a closer look inside the vehicle, it's difficult to tell where the original vehicle stops and the conversion begins. This vehicle would have been delivered in, a hole would have been then cut in the rear of the vehicle and a lowered floor section inserted, enabling the wheelchair user to achieve the maximum headroom and remain comfortable whilst travelling in the vehicle. Now you can see the original floor height of the vehicle here and then the lowered floor section here. This particular vehicle has a non-slip ramp, non-slip interior and a 4-point wheelchair restraint system. Now that's standard on all of the wheelchair accessible vehicles on the scheme, and that enables your wheelchair to be held securely in position whilst you're travelling. So we've been through the basics today of what a wheelchair accessible vehicle is, but for more information including all of the contact details for the converters that we work with and details of the vehicles that they have available, go to motability.co.uk and use the WAV search tool.
Thank you, Graham. It's doing a good job of showing what a wheelchair accessible vehicle there is and how you really use it. So these are the ways that we at Motability Operations talk about the different types of wheelchair accessible vehicle. So if you take Graham's advice and go to motability.co.uk and start working out which WAV is right for you, you'll see this is how we break down the different sizes. So small and medium small are often the same base vehicle, just medium small is a longer wheelbase version, so it gives you more room and maybe more seats. Medium large is more often like a transit, something of that kind of size. We've got some great examples of that here today. And then large is usually a commercial vehicle, a much bigger space, and we use these for bespoke passenger solutions where you might not be traveling in a wheelchair, you might be traveling in a bed, or drive from wheelchair solutions. And these are a couple of the different ways you can get into the wheelchair accessible vehicle. So the most common and the one you'll see here most today is the ramp. So you go into the back of the vehicle in your chair, up the ramp, in the rear of the vehicle, and then we have lifts. These also tend to be at the back, but sometimes they're out the side. And a lift, you move onto the lift, and then you're powered into the back of the vehicle. So we're also looking at some real problems in the future for WAVs, and we're working with our partners to solve them. So I've talked about how the floor is lowered in order to create more headroom. Electric vehicles often have the battery in the base of the vehicle. So our converter partners have worked really hard to solve this, and we've got electric wheelchair accessible vehicles here today at the show and online at motability.co.uk for you to take a look at. These are expensive vehicles because the battery electric vehicles are really young in this space where they're a bit more mature in the car space, but our partners have worked really hard to make them affordable, and we've got them here. We've also got today, for the first time at the show, nearly new wheelchair accessible vehicles. So these are up to 4 years old, up to 50,000 miles, and these are vehicles that have been out with a customer already. We've got some over on the left-hand side, as I'm stood here, but they're also available to find the suppliers of them on the Motability website. You can't look through the specific vehicles yet, but that's something that we're looking at. They're available usually at a lower advance payment and much more quickly, but they haven't been built specifically for you. So it's worth taking a look at the nearly new area today and seeing how that works. So if you think that a wheelchair accessible vehicle might be right for you, you'll probably know there aren't car dealerships up and down the country where you can go and look at all the different types of wheelchair accessible vehicle. So our partners will come to your house and show you a wheelchair accessible vehicle and help work out if it's right for you. And on all of the stands today are the teams from those companies that come to your house, so you can chat to them and work out whether that home demonstration would be valuable. We also provide all of that information at the Motability website. I'd encourage you to shortlist the vehicles you think are right for you and have 1, 2, or 3 demonstrations to make sure you get the right vehicle. If you have one demonstration and the vehicle that's come out is the right one, then you can lock in and get that ordered, or you can have more demonstrations if that's what you need. So things to consider when having a demonstration are a lot like the things you'd consider if you were buying a car. So who needs to be there with you? Who will travel with you in the wheelchair accessible vehicle? It's important to have them there for the demonstration. And when you get that demonstration, the experienced field teams will help you try it where you'll normally use it. You should take any equipment with you so you get as real-world an example of you using that wheelchair accessible vehicle as you can get. And you can practice using things like the tie-down restraints that Graham used in the video. This last one's really tough. So a wheelchair accessible vehicle lease is 5 years. but I would ask, if you're considering a wheelchair accessible vehicle, to think as far ahead as you can to make sure that if your condition's changing, that it will meet your condition. I know that's not always possible, but it's worth thinking about. So this is the final video. I'm going to share with you now some thoughts that customers have had about wheelchair accessible vehicles.
Hi, my name's Sarah and I'm looking for a new wheelchair accessible vehicle. I've been on the scheme for about 15 years and I'm currently on my first WAV. I'm going for a different WAV because the one that I currently have doesn't suit my needs. What worked for me 5 years ago doesn't work for me now. So when I'm choosing my next WAV, the main thing that I'm looking for is an automatic ramp, access for my wheelchair, and how easy it is for me to get my wheelchair in and out of it. Every time I've had to deal with the Motability scheme, they've always been lovely and really helpful, friendly.
I'm Graham.
I'm Tom.
Hi Tom. Hi, how you doing? I'm Graham.
Hiya Graham, I'm Sarah, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
I met with Graham, one of the WAV specialists, and he showed me some of the vehicles. There was a few vehicles that I seen that I didn't think my wheelchair would be able to fit into, and then it fitted and it actually worked for me. I think it's really important to have a test drive when you get your next WAV. When I was speaking to Graham, he was saying, make sure you go through the speed bumps, make sure you drive in your local area. You have to make sure you're comfortable, but yeah, test drives are incredibly important. The kinds of support you get from your WAV supplier is they give you a familiarisation check after a month, so they come and check if everything's going okay. The 1 month check-in is really beneficial because you can ask the WAV supplier any questions and they can show you anything that you are not familiar with. You can get to know your vehicle a bit better, and so yeah, it's really helpful. I think it is important to think about if my circumstances change. However, if they do, I'm already picking an easy option now for the next time anyway, so I'm not too worried about that anyway. My WAV allows me to do absolutely everything. Like, I don't know what my life would be without it. I go to Liverpool, Manchester, I go to the theatre a lot, I take my nephew out, to take the dog out. None of these things would be possible without my WAV. It gives me so much freedom and independence. I love it.
It gives you a really good feel for how it is to have a WAV. So I mentioned in the introduction that it's not all plain sailing having a wheelchair accessible vehicle. They are absolutely incredible, but they do have some small compromises compared to cars that are worth thinking about. So the first one is that you'll be sat slightly higher in your chair in a wheelchair accessible vehicle than you would be in a seat. And that means that when it corners, you can feel a bit more movement. And in some people, that does induce a motion sickness. So we hear that sometimes. And when I traveled in one, I certainly understood a little bit about how that might feel. We also see the floor is lowered. So if you've got big speed bumps near where you live, they have a little bit less ground clearance and they can ground out more than a standard production car would. So it's worth just thinking about those couple of compromises. Do they impact you? So what do you do next? Look at all of your options. Is an adapted car right? Is a wheelchair accessible vehicle right? Speak to our converter partners for more information. Have a no obligation home demonstration and make sure you've got the right wheelchair accessible vehicle for you. And go to motability.co.uk for all the latest prices and models that are available on the scheme. So if you've got any questions, our converters are here, but whilst I'm here, I'd love to take any questions that you've got. I don't know if we've got the mic ready, so if there are any questions, we'll bring the mic to you just in case anyone else has got the same question.
Hi there.
Hi.
I am a Motability customer with a WAV that's absolutely fantastic, but it's ending near of its life. It's nearly 10 years old.
Oh, wow.
So my question is, if I chose a nearly new WAV, could some minor adaptations be added to it? So, for instance, hand controls, put a few restraints in, that kind. But just could that be done?
Yes, so
Yeah.
we will adapt nearly new WAVs. What's worth bearing in mind is that our wheelchair accessible vehicles go out on a 5-year lease. So you've got it for that longer period of time, you get more comfortable with it. The nearly news go on a 3-year lease, but yes, you can have it adapted for you and make sure it works for your circumstances. Our partners are the same people who provide the nearly news as provide the new ones, so they understand our customers inside out. Thank you. Has anyone else got any questions? We'll get over to you.
Good afternoon. Do you have to be a member of the mobility scheme? So do you have to be claiming? The reason I'm asking is I run a residential home and I'm after, you know, a vehicle to take the residents out, etc. And just wondered, obviously, we couldn't claim it because it would be the company that's actually, you know, wanting the vehicle. So.
Okay, that's a great question. So you can't buy a car on the Motability scheme unless you receive the enhanced rate personal independence payment or the higher rate disability living allowance. However, our wheelchair accessible vehicle partners are in here right now. They're listening to me. So you won't get out of here without talking to somebody about buying a wheelchair accessible vehicle. So you can buy them directly, you can finance them directly, but not through us. You would have to buy it straight from the converters themselves. Thank you. It was a good question. Are there any other questions? Okay. Thank you all very much for attending. I really appreciate it, and we'll see you all later. Thank you.